Today we're going to talk about our inquiry project data section. So in your project we're doing, we have a number of sections for the tide pool project. The first one's the background, which we worked on already. Then after the background, we'll have the procedure. After the procedure, we have this data section. Now I hopped to the data section even before the procedure because that section can drive a lot of other things you do. So let's focus on that for just a second. So what to include in this data section? You want to include data tables, graphs, and any qualitative notes. So let me go over what I'm talking about here. Data tables. Here you have an example of what a data table looks like. This should be drawn up in either Microsoft Word or Excel. If you do it in Excel, when you copy and paste it, make sure when you paste it in, it gets readable. Sometimes when an Excel table is cut and pasted into a Word document, the formatting changes and it does not look like something that's actually readable. So it's very important to get that done correctly. You are going to be presenting your original data. So if you weren't able to take at one end of the pieces of data, you'll have to put a star in that section or something that signifies that there's no data for that particular portion of the table. So make sure that it's very accurate. Also, you'll want all columns and rows labeled. You can see in this, each column is labeled and the row is by name, so each name is then taken across. In this particular table, there isn't a need for that row labeling, it's just column labeling, and that's fine for the nature of this table. Next, all tables have to be labeled. So if I were to give this table a label, I would have to say it would have to do something with dimensions and prices. So it needs to have a label because as it stands, we don't even know what this table is about that you see here in the example. You need to have a label on this. And if you don't, it doesn't fit in with what your whole story that you're telling in your inquiry project. Next, you need to also include some details. On the bottom, below your data table, you can put bullets, you can put asterisks, whatever it is that helps kind of set this apart. You should make sure you have the date of collection, the location of the collection, and the time of collection. Now you don't always have to have the time, but we're going to tide pools. Thus, the time of collection is actually fairly necessary because by figuring out what time it is, you can figure out how high the tide was at that particular time. And these need to be included on the bottom, as I said. Second, a graph. So determine that the graph that is appropriate for your data. That's always the first step. What kind of data do you have? Did you have different categories of things and you took numbers on those? Well, if you have that sort of thing, this qualitative category type, you'll need a bar graph. If you have two quantitative variables, like something that's a number that's changing over time, and the example we have here would be a good example of that. In this graph here, you'll want to have a scatter plot or a line type graph, and either one would be fine. With line graphs, you have to make sure that you label graph axes. In this case, you can see the NCS Common Core of Data is on the x-axis, and on the y-axis you have expenditure per student in thousands. So use proper labeling. That's really key. If we don't know what that means, the graph doesn't do its one job, and the one job of a graph is to express data in a way that is organized so you're actually telling a story. Second, give the graph a title. Unlike our last example in the table that didn't have a title, this one actually does, and it's expenditure per pupil and average daily attendance. Selected years, 1977 through 78 and 2002 through 2003. So that tells you exactly what this graph is expressing, and that's very important. Another point is you will be making your graph in Microsoft Excel. So if you're not familiar with that graphing feature, we will work on it in class, but we will expect that all of them come from Excel, and you will just cut and paste this into your document. Finally, we're going to put in some qualitative notes. This just adds extra details to the data. So if there's something I need to know about that data, or whoever your audience is needs to know about the data, this is where you add that. This is not explaining how you gathered the data in any detail, because that would be done in the procedure section or the protocol section. But if there's one piece of data missing, you might put a star and put missing because of why. So some quick little thing that explains that one little piece that someone will be trying to figure out when they see your data. You'll also want to do any additions, and these are little subnotes even. This is not a huge sentence or something, but any little things that may be needed to explain so that a person could understand what is the actual data you took. So that is important. So this clears up what we're going to be putting in our data section, and I hope that was helpful.